Hey everyone, here we go again. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. And if you're a new listener or viewer on Game of Crimes, a special welcome to you because you've come to the right place to see and hear some of the best true crime content anywhere. Now, my guest this week is a true American hero, a former combat veteran who was shot several times in different operations, a man who I met while working out at my gym, my friend Javier Mackey. And as a heads up, this week I'm posting this interview in 3 separate episodes. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. Once again, thank you for listening to and watching The Game of Crimes. As most of you know, I'm now posting our guest interviews on YouTube. If you haven't seen any of the episodes, I strongly encourage you to go to YouTube, type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the search bar at the top, and see what you think. And while you're there, go ahead and click on the subscribe button, the like button, and feel free to share with all your friends. This won't cost you anything other than a minute or two of your time, but this really helps promote Game of Crimes. I know none of this would be possible without your support, and I do appreciate you giving me your time. If you like what you're hearing on Game of Crimes and would like to hear more, go to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. There you'll find several bonus episodes each month, ranging from serious and current topics to some silly and fun events. And you can get early audio access to each week's interviews before they drop on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can even subscribe for free and hear the first 5 minutes of each episode to help you decide if you'd like to spend some of your hard-earned cash to hear more. That's patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Now, my guest this week is Javier Mackey, a 20-year retired veteran of the United States Army Special Forces who served multiple deployments in different combat zones, namely Afghanistan, along with deployments to other countries. You might ask, well, why is Murph hosting a retired military man when Game of Crimes primarily focuses on heroes in the law enforcement field and crime arena? Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, the Taliban and their supporters are nothing more than criminals. Many of them are terrorists, preying on the innocent, the weak, and those who do not or will not support their warped ideologies. I talk with our guests so you can hear their stories of bravery, sacrifice, commitment to something greater than themselves, and how they deal with life afterward. And that's why I invite heroes like Javier Mackey and others to be on the show. Javier's stories and adventures are so compelling, I decided to divide his interview into 3 episodes rather than 2. So this week you'll get part 1 on Monday, part 2 on Tuesday, and part 3 on Wednesday. Javier will tell us about one battle he endured during which one of his closest friends went above and beyond the call of duty to protect his brothers in arms. And that hero, he made the ultimate sacrifice, which resulted in him being awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Wow. With Javier's concurrence, this week's episodes of Game of Crimes are dedicated to the memory of Staff Sergeant Robert J. Miller. Remember that name, Robert J. Miller. In the Bible, John 15:3 reads, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." May you rest in peace, brother. You know, as horrible and tragic as those events were, Javier's story is one of recovery, perseverance, of not forgetting the memory of his brother in arms, but moving forward to help others. And you're going to hear about their unsung heroes in his life. And you know what I'm talking about, his family. But to hear Javier's life, you know what comes next. It's time to get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Welcome back to the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. You know what I say every week? We have a special guest, but let me tell you, we got a hero on the show today. He may not own up to it because I'm finding out things on him as I'm doing research that he didn't tell me when I met him in person. So we're going to have some fun with today's show, but it is a true honor and a pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, Javier Mackey. He is a retired U.S. Army Green Beret combat veteran, served multiple deployments in Afghanistan. Going to tell you about how many times he got shot here shortly. But I swear I've got goosebumps, man, just talking about you already. We haven't even started the interview, but welcome to Game of Crimes, my friend. It truly is an honor to have you on.
It's good to be here.
We'll talk a little bit here in just a moment about how I met Javier and where I met him, because it's a cool place that we both like to go. Although I didn't see you there this morning.
No,
I was there.
I had to go to the VA. So
Understood. All right. And for all our listeners out there, I got to hit you with this quick disclaimer. Game of Crimes. Now, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We do take these stories seriously, but we never take ourselves serious, especially when it comes to these stupid criminals out there. And so I sprung this on Javier just before we started recording. Hey, this is what it's all about, Small Town Police Blotter. Would you mind reading the story? And he's agreed to. So, Javier, tell us about this strange person up in Maine. All right,
so this is a story of Kevin Gray, a 41-year-old thief in Maine. He ordered a ride share to a local TJ Maxx. Then he blabbed to the driver about how he was going to rob the place. The driver dropped him off, and of course, the driver called the cops. Well, the police identified the driver as Gray, in addition to being a suspect of the crime committed the previous day. They saw that he had warrants out, and when they saw him exit the TJ Maxx and approached him, there was a small foot chase. I can't imagine how fast he ran, but they caught him, and he was arrested. So Gray had several sets of pre-conviction bail conditions that barred him from several businesses in the area, as you can guess, because of the theft charges at the store. So Gray is facing charges in relation to the theft, as well as drug possession warrants and violations of conditions of release.
Wow. And he had warrants. They always have other warrants out for him.
There's something about jail, I'm going to touch on that too later on, that criminals keep going back for whatever reason. They keep re-enlisting for those little short deployments or long deployments in jail, and I don't get it.
Man, and that's exactly right. You even see some criminals, and we'll talk about it when we get there, but you even see some criminals commit crime and then sit there and wait for the cops to come and get them so they can go back to jail.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what a you know what? That guy might get the Dumbass of the Year award.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep robbing places in the same area.
And I want to tell an Uber driver who I don't know all about it.
Right. Like he's going to get a high five out of the door. Good luck, man.
Hey, if you'll give me 20% commission, I'll wait on you and I'll be your getaway driver.
Now the driver's accessory.
Yeah. So for our next story here, just so you know, Javier and I are both in the Orlando, Florida area. So we always got to throw a Florida story in here, right? Which there seems to be more Florida stories than all the other 49 states combined when I go to find these stories.
Good old Florida, man.
But I've heard of him, but I've never listened to the guy.
I don't know. I think he's like the mythical beast, like the unicorn.
Well, I tell you what, it doesn't matter where you go. People know about the Florida man. So here we are. A convicted felon in 3 different Florida counties eluded law enforcement for most of November. So this was several months ago. But authorities tracked her down, not him, her down, hiding in her own home. The Citrus County Sheriff's Office had been searching for 39-year-old Stavy Usher, who, according to her own, or to the Sheriff's Department Facebook post, has a history of fraud, grand theft, and obtaining property by a worthless check. That's just a woman got problems paying her bills, I guess. Well, but you think about it, I mean, Connie, that's my wife. She's a big shopper, so thank goodness that we do pay those bills.
If your wife is anything like mine, she's on Amazon all the time, every day.
I think between her, my youngest daughter, and my daughter-in-law, I think we keep Amazon in business. It's amazing. So back to the story here. The Post also noted that Usher is registered as a convicted felon in Citrus, Manatee, and Pasco counties. So she likes to get around. And that she was wanted currently for a parole violation, quote, for the sale of fentanyl and unlawful use of a two-way communication device. You know what? When you bring fentanyl into it, that kind of takes the humor out of the story, doesn't it? It's not clear what that alleged parole violation entailed, but what is clear is that hide and seek may not be Usher's forte. While deputies were searching her residence, they found her hiding inside of a couch, meaning that she's now back in custody.
She could probably use some, take some tips from Bigfoot.
What's that TV show on about the nerds? Watch it all the time. It's Sheldon is one of the main guys in there. Big Bang Theory. And the only time I've ever seen anybody hiding in his couch is when he pulled one on his roommate to scare him.
Bazinga.
Exactly. So this young lady here, she might qualify for that TV show.
Most definitely.
Anyway, so thank you very much for playing along there. It's I know it's goofy, but we have a lot of fun with it. And our listeners, like I told you before we started recording, I try to do away with it, and the listeners, they lit me up pretty good. So that's why we have it.
It's kind of fun, you know.
It is, and it was actually the listeners who came up with the idea of, hey, you've got some great guests on there. Have them read one of the stories.
Yeah.
So
feels really good.
So you might have
good to be involved.
Man, you're gonna have to set your high standards a little bit higher here. Come on over here. All right. So how we met. There is a guy that I've gotten to be pretty good friends with in the gym that you already know. He's a captain with the Orlando Police Department, and I'm just gonna call him Captain Jerry because I didn't get permission to use his last name. And Jerry, I don't know. I don't think he's the kind of guy that really seeks to be on any type of shows. He just takes care of business, and he is dedicated to his workouts, and we've got to be good buddies there. Well, last week he brought Javier over to me, and it happened to be one of those days when I actually was working out and sweating, so I was showing off a little bit because old men, they're trying to work out. Being a young man is kind of ugly sometimes. But he introduced me to Javier here, and just started praising Javier's background, his efforts, how he has served his country, the citizens, how he served you and me, just a freaking hero. And then told me that he'd been awarded a Bronze Star with a V on it for valor. And we'll talk about that here shortly. But I couldn't get any more information out of him. I mean, I think, and towards the end here, we're going to talk about what he's doing now. I think he's planning a podcast here in the not too distant future. So I tell you right now, Game of Crimes will do everything we can to support you with that
thank
effort.
you. I appreciate that.
And, but then I got to doing my research, and there's a lot of stuff you just kind of left out. And I think what it is Javier here is humble. I think he's proud to have served his country, and he certainly earned the respect of every one of us. Wait till you hear the stuff that he was involved with. Holy cow. And it's actually more than what I could find on you, Javier. Yeah. So we'll get into that. If Captain Jerry says you're okay with him, then you're okay with me. I trust that man. I respect him, and he's a lot of fun to hang out with at the gym.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a hard time talking to people, and I've seen Jerry around the gym several times, and I walk past him, kind of give him the head nod, and then about a couple of months ago, I saw him wearing a Marine Corps shirt. I was like, okay, he looked like somebody I knew, but I know definitely it's not him. But I do know that this guy I knew that I served with, who's a stud. They look like they could be brothers. And so I approached him what was it, Saturday I think it was, and we got to talk, and he was like, you got to meet this guy over here. And he took off while I was completing my set, and then he brought me over and introduced me to you. And it takes, like I said, it takes once I get to know you, I'll start opening up, but it takes so much for me to actually talk to people. So I actually went out of my comfort zone that I normally have.
I appreciate that, man. Just so you know, I've got a can opener here. We're going to open you up today. How about that? Now, if you guys can probably tell, Javier's not a small person. He's much bigger than I am, and I think my only defense would be, could I outrun him?
Probably.
And right now I'm wearing a brace on one ankle, and I don't think I can. So I'm going to be nice to him. I do want to point out that Captain Jerry was not in the gym this morning either.
Yeah.
So you guys are slacking. I'm going to have to have some accountability here.
Yeah. I get it.
Hey, what were you getting ready to say there?
So just talking about being fit. You put a lot on your body when you join the military. There's a lot more stress, and then that while you're serving, because you're in a leadership position or you're in an elite unit, you tend to not. You have injuries that are masked by overindulging in other things, And it's not until you go sit behind a desk and be a desk weenie that all these injuries start manifesting themselves. And you're like, man, I didn't even know I had that part of my body. And the next thing you know, you're just like, oh. And so it's been a long road. Like I put on a bunch of weight, went through all the stages of depression and 5 stages of grief. And then, we'll talk about that more later. But and that's why I'm in the gym constantly. So if I'm not in the gym, it's because there was something more important I had to do that.
I understand. Mama said you couldn't go. Just you can own up to it. That's what it is with me. I think my wife's glad for me to get out of the house. So why don't you go to the gym? Don't you need to go to the gym?
I wish my wife would roll over and be like that Marine Corps cadence to give me some. It'd just be like, all right, I can stay at home for that, but I have to get in there.
It's just funny how all this works out. It really is. The gym for me was always a way to relieve stress for, just different things that you're involved with. And now I think it's a necessity because of my age, because when I miss the gym for maybe a week or so, things start hurting that don't hurt when I go to the gym.
Right.
But I also finally wised up a little bit, and I started using, I don't know if you know Nick there at the gym, one of the trainers, but I train with him maybe one day a week, and he shows me how to do things so that I don't hurt myself.
Right.
Very smart.
Yeah.
So, which I can't say that about many things I do, but that's one of the smart things I did.
Yeah.
So
it's real important to have.
All right,
it's real important to have those trainers at least show you how to do the exercise correctly.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and they've got some fantastic people in there. It's that's one of the reasons I like going there, because it's they like to have a laugh. It's not all serious workout. So
yeah,
I tell you what though, Nick whooped my butt last week. I thought. I don't know if you played sports growing up, and we'll find out if you did, but if you're like out at football practice and you work out so hard, you're ready to throw up. I had to sit down for a few minutes and put my head between my knees and swallow deeply, just so I wouldn't throw up.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good. I haven't been back to him since. Nick, if you're listening, there you go. You heard me. All right. Let's get into your background here. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your family dynamics, brothers and sisters, high school, that kind of thing.
So I grew up in Central Valley of California. We started off in the Bay Area in a small a small steel town called Pittsburgh. And there U.S. Steel opened up a factory after World War II, where my grandfather, who was going to go off to the Pacific to fight, ended up not going because we dropped, those 2 big bombs on Japan. And so that changed everything for both my grandparents, grandfathers, both on my father's side and my mom's side. My father's grandparents, my grandfather on my dad's side stayed in the Bay Area. And then my mom's dad moved into a small town called Pittsburgh. So my mom grew up there. All her brothers and sisters grew up there. Eventually she met my dad, my biological father, and they had me. Had a pretty tumultuous marriage. He was in and out of jail. This was during the crack epidemic, and it really hit that community really hard, especially my family. My mom, she suffered from not only domestic violence, but she also fell victim to the drug epidemic at the time period, and she was placed in a really bad place. So she was there raising myself, my brother, and my sister. One thing led to another, and it's like the third act for her. She ended up going to rehab. We were taken away from her, and we lived with my grandparents for a little bit, for about a year, and then I never heard from my dad ever again. During that time period, she met my stepdad, who raised me as his son, and coming from, he was a divorcee as well, and he was at the time he was in the Army Reserves, and he worked a couple other jobs too. But he was also a recovering drug addict, alcoholic. And so he was really instrumental in helping my mom work through her recovery. And then eventually the two of them got settled in the Central Valley in a town called Stockton. where we grew up, where I grew up as a teenager and went to middle school and high school. I grew up playing sports, baseball mainly. When I got into high school, I entered a different phase of my life. Because when I first moved there, I started running around with these kids that were so where you have drugs, illicit drugs during that boom, you also have gangs. So this was at the height of the Bloods and the Crips in California. And I learned really quick that that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. And, I learned this in middle school. That's not the lifestyle I wanted to put my life on track toward.
What was it you say you learned? What was there an instance?
Yeah, so the concrete experience that I went through was I had completed a baseball game, and my coach had gathered us together afterwards because it was the last game of the season. We were undefeated, and there was a carnival in our neighborhood. And they were like, hey, we're going to I'm going to pay for 5 rides. We'll go there in our uniforms. If it's all right with your parents, we'll have fun for a few hours. So we get to the carnival, and while I was there, the team. So we were the Dodgers, and then we were wearing our blue shirts and our white pants. And the team that we had played against, I forget what team it was, but theirs was red. And one of the kids from that team was at the carnival. And there were some teenagers there dressed like gang, like they're affiliated with the gang, all wearing blue. And we were all kind of waiting in line for a drink or hot dog or whatever at the time. And they just walked up to this kid, and it was really obvious that this kid wasn't affiliated with any gangs or anything. He wasn't throwing up any signs. He wasn't even from the area, to be honest with you. And he was from the other side of town. And they just beat this poor kid up for no reason. And I was like, oh, I got so much going for me. And then 2, I had what played a big important part of my life was my dad, my stepdad, who that's not the way he raised me. He raised me to be respectful and to treat to treat people with dignity, and that just wasn't the way he raised me. And my mom, and I saw this kid get beat up, and there was nothing that the rest of us can't do because these kids were a lot bigger than us. But they were kids nonetheless. They ended up getting hauled off to jail, and this poor kid went to the hospital and spent some time there. He wasn't able.
How old were you at that time?
I think I was about 13, 14 years old, getting ready to go into high school. Okay. And so the kids I was running with in middle school, I really had no choice, because I didn't have any friends when we moved there. And but I did have another group of friends that when I wasn't with those guys, I was with these kids, and these kids were on my band. The kids, I was in the marching band, and we were pretty tight. When I say tight, we did everything together. And so when I got into high school that summer, because I went to year-round schooling in California, because we didn't have enough schools, and schools were overcrowded. So when I was in middle school, there was like 40 kids per class. But when I got into high school, there was like 11 to 12 kids per class with a year-round system. Wow. So I was bused from the bad part of town into the good part of town. And that's where I developed these new friendships. Unfortunately, that crowd that I was with in middle school followed on, and they ended up, I would say most of them ended up in jail at some point, serving long periods of time. And then I think the last of the guys that I've connected with during that time period on Facebook, he'd just gotten out. But yeah, they all came from broken homes. They all came from one-parent households, whether it be the mom or the dad. The parents really, and if in either case, the parents really monitor what they did. So, but when the kids I was in band with, a lot of them came from single-parent homes, but those parents were really active, involved in their lives. They were involved in the band portion and any extracurricular sports we were involved in. And then we had a really good band teacher, Mr. Everts. I mean, he just graduated college, young guy. He really put the effort into investing his time with us. And when I got into high school, that was the case. The teachers put a lot of effort into us as students and making sure that we understood the material. And I'm really grateful for the year-round system that we were involved in, because they gave us that attention that we didn't get in middle school. And on top of that, they really helped shape how we saw the world at that time period. And of course, there's a lot going on. We had the Gulf War. We had the invasion of Panama. Prior to that, we had the San Francisco earthquake happen, the Rodney King riots. And through all that, our teachers were there. They were like, all right, hey, if you guys need to talk about this, if you have any questions, as to, well, talk to us. And they actually invested some time into answering the questions that we really didn't understand.
That's excellent.
So
that's teachers that are actually involved. That's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah. I love school so much that I was almost there. Like even during, so we had, the way it worked for us is you have 4 months, you went to school, you get 2 months off, 4 months, and then that's the end of your freshman year. And then you repeat that for the next 4. And that's what we did. I mean, but when those 2 months are off, there's still classes going on. And you can take some extra classes if you want to try to get ahead for, what do you call them, to graduate early or whatnot. But by the time I was a junior and a senior in high school, I had completed all my prerequisites. And I had like maybe 2 classes both years that were mandatory classes I had to take, but the rest were electives. And so I took a lot of music theory, and I wanted to be, because Mr. Everts was a huge influence in my life. I wanted to be I wanted to write music scores. And so I planned on going to a music conservatory there in Stockton, and I didn't get into it. I went to after I graduated, I went to a community college for about a year, and I just bombed out. I just didn't have the ear. I can play music, but I just didn't have the ear for listening to music and being able to write it down.
Yeah,
it's a really difficult language to learn. But all the other classes I kind of excelled in. I wasn't graduating at the top of the class, but college, I wasn't ready for college. And so, but then I was kind of a dirtbag kid to my parents. And so, and this was at the time period where your mom would just kick you out of that. Like my mom, I talked smack to my mom, and she kicked me out of the house and told me not to come back after I graduated high school. And so I was out on my own. My stepdad was gone to drill for the reserves. And if he had been home and I had said that, I would probably not be talking. The things that came out of my mouth, you would probably not be talking to me right now, because he was very protective of my mom.
Yeah.
So I was allowed to come home and wash my clothes and eat dinner on Sundays with mom and dad, my brother and sister. But outside of that, I was an 18-year-old kid living out on my own, sleeping in a sleeping bag in a studio apartment that I was paying $400 in rent, working at KFC and in a pizzeria called Round Table at the same time, and then going to school. So, so at this time, one of the things my dad said was, "Hey, you need to, as you go through life, it's good to find spirituality." And the only spirituality that we had in our home was the 12-step program that my mom and dad. I would go to AA meetings with my mom and dad, and that was kind of like church for us, but we went like almost every night because my parents needed. That's how much they needed reinforcement. And then they were also helping other people. They were sponsoring other people through their recovery as well. And so, so I went to this 12-step program as a kid because I needed it because I was traumatized by the drug abuse that was in the home growing up. And well, my parents just wanted to make sure that we can break that cycle with them and it didn't carry over with us. And I feel like it worked. But my dad was like, hey, you need to find religion in your life. And this was young. I was young when my stepdad told me this, and I started attending church. I had that to fall back on. And I got baptized when I was 18. And then I went and served a 2-year mission for my church here in Georgia, across the state line there, just north of us. And I did that for 2 years. And while I was on that 2-year mission, I served at what was formerly called Fort Gordon, and then what's formerly called Fort Benning. And I was really impressed with my dad's military service, and I was impressed with the people that I got to serve, to minister to while I was on my mission, because a lot of those guys and those congregations were from the Ranger Battalion that was in Somalia, and they were vets from that conflict. And so I didn't know, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been like starstruck at these guys, because these guys were it. These were the guys that you read about in Black Hawk Down. And so
let me just stop you there for a second, and I want to back up and ask a couple questions. So with the band, what instruments did you play?
So in band, so I started off playing music when I was in the 6th grade, and I started off with the trumpet. That's when we lived in Pittsburgh. And then when I moved to Stockton, I went to school in Lodi. So I lived in northern Stockton, went to Lodi. In middle school there, I couldn't afford, like, you can rent. My parents couldn't afford to rent a trumpet, but the school provided tubas. And so my band teacher needed a tuba player, and she approached me and was like, hey, if I teach you how to play the tuba, will you play the tuba? I'm like, sure. And so this tuba was as big as I was. It was like, it's called a concert tuba. So the bell sticks straight up, and it's like, and so she would pick me up on Tuesdays and Thursdays, drive me to school, give me a 1-hour lesson on the tuba. And she did that for the first half of the year. And in the second half of the year, she just left me alone because I picked it up pretty fast. And so, so I started off. So once we moved from Pittsburgh to Stockton, I started playing the tuba. I get into high school. I continued to play the tuba because I really enjoyed it. But I started to dabble in other instruments. I played the trombone for jazz band. I played, and then we had what they called for marching band. So you have marching band, then you had percussion ensemble. And so the percussion ensemble was just an extracurricular that you do. And, you march around a football or a basketball court, and you play, you beat on the drums. And I did that for like 2 years. And then and within the band structure, it's kind of like being in the military. You have section leaders, and you have the director. Well, there's a position called the drum major, and the drum major is like the assistant to the band director. But unlike the band director, the drum major performs and gets graded during marching competitions. So when I wasn't playing high school sports, I was doing marching band and everything that involved in it. And I was a drum major for 2 years doing that. And with that, Mr. Everts would give these every summer, over the summer, he would do these little workshops where once or twice throughout summer, we would go to school, and he'll give us, he was really big in the Covey, Franklin R. Covey publications. So we started getting some he was developing leaders. And he's awesome. And to this day, I graduated in the 90s, and today I still keep in touch with him on a daily basis.
That's
Either through
outstanding.
text, sharing a meme nowadays, or, liking something on Facebook. So he's been a huge influence in my life.
Which sports did you play?
So I played baseball, and I played a couple seasons of basketball, 2 years of basketball.
What positions?
So I was a power forward, and when I played basketball, so I was either a 3 or 4 man. And then in baseball, I started off as a catcher when I was young. I caught until I was in high school. And then I sat the bench one game, and our second baseman got hurt. So they put me at second base. And then every year after that, that's what I played. I was a second baseman, and I was pretty good at it.
Infield's the place to be.
Yeah. The only reason I played catcher is because you're involved in every aspect of the game. And that's what that was my thinking as a kid. They started me off in the outfield, and I thought it sucked because not too many times you get to catch especially when you're in younger ages, you get to catch a fly ball. So
yeah. And then I always threw my arm out when I played outfield, trying to throw it all the way to home plate, and I couldn't do it. But then you're in pain for a couple of days.
But I was a generation that played baseball in the streets. So we would play football and baseball in the streets, and when a car came down the road, you just moved out of the way and then went back to playing on it. So I don't see kids out there these days doing things. Rarely.
Yeah. Here where we live in Orlando, I'll see kids, the community pool's just not too far down the street here from us. So you see kids going down there, but never do you see them out playing with other kids. No. Like, there's a couple nice playgrounds here in the neighborhood, and you don't see them out there very often.
Yeah, so going back to my middle school times, man, we would get on our bikes, me and that group of bad kids I was hanging out with, and we would ride all over Stockton. Stockton's a big city. We would leave my mom was like, just be home for dinner. And so and so at 9 o'clock in the morning, we're gathering the dudes up, and then there will be 20 of us rolling deep on all these really broken down bikes, just rolling through the neighborhood, not really causing trouble or anything. Just we go find a park to play pickup basketball game or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Just something
to do. Yeah. And it'll be in the middle of the summer too. And it'll be hot as hell. But yeah, you just get out, and we weren't allowed to hang out in the house, even though we had game systems. Parents would be like, "Oh, get out! You have to."
Yeah.
So, but in high school,
things are different.
Yeah. I'm sorry. No, but in high school, I started worked for KFC, and I worked for a car wash. I was working with felons at a car wash. That was kind of fun. They taught these felons, they were all on probation. And I swear we were set up for failure, because these cars would come in, really nice Jaguars, Porsches, what have you. And there would be wads of cash sitting in the center console. And I'm like, dude, no. This has got to be a set. I remember one time I picked up this wad, and it was just nothing but hundreds. And I'm like, I know these fools are just trying, and I just put it back. I'm like, no, I shouldn't even touched it.
Yeah.
But these guys serving probation, what have you, they would sit there and be like, they would be like, hey, little man, what's up? And he was like, hey, don't ever steal from these cars. I don't care what it is. Don't ever steal from these cars. And these are all convicted felons working at a car wash too. So,
in their own way, they're looking out for you. Yeah. Now, you mentioned doing a missionary trip, so I'm guessing that's with the Mormon church. Yeah. And you're living in California. How did you end up in Georgia?
So what the church does is when you turn, at the time when you were 19, you would fill out paperwork and you send it to the church headquarters. And I think they just do this thing where they cover their eyes and throw a dart. And wherever it lands, that's where, if there's a mission in that area, that's where they're going to call you to. And so, I was working as a lifeguard at this point. My mom let me move back home when I told her I was going to go on a mission. But I didn't get a bedroom. So I had all my things packed up in a box in a suitcase. And she gave me a blanket and said, you can sleep on the couch. Your brother gets his own room. Your sister gets her own room. And that's it. And I'm like, so for 6 months, I slept on a couch until I got my all my affairs together, submitted my paperwork. About a month after that, I got my mission call. And I went to go serve in the Georgia Macon mission. I did that for 2 years.
Okay, now I've got experience. I've been stationed in Atlanta twice, and I'm very familiar with Macon.
Yeah.
You being a black man, did you have any issues down there? Because back then, that wasn't far from being Klan time.
So this is 94, so it was different. So let me tell you what, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because Hollywood had programmed me to think that Georgia was this horrible racist place.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I had a hard time with was my accent. Coming from California to Georgia was drastically different. So when I would be in the black neighborhoods, they would be like, "Hey, where are you from?" And I'm like,
"Yeah,
I'm from California." Do all black people talk like that from California? Like, well, I know I do. I can't speak for everyone. And I didn't know what that code switching, what that is. But no, I stood out like I blended in, but I stood out the moment. It didn't matter who I was talking to.
Mm-hmm.
There was one instance we were in the hood, and me and my companion got shot at in Fort Valley.
Wow.
And that was the first time I ever got shot at. And he ended up being a cop, and I ended up going into the military.
What did you guys do that necessitated somebody shooting at you?
So here's a story. So we had this black family that was a member of our congregation, and we had been trying to get in touch with them, and we decided to go visit them at their house. And this was before cell phones, so it wasn't like I could just call them up and let them know, but they weren't picking up. So we were just like, "Hey, let's go visit them." So we drove over to the house, and they answered the door and everything. We're like, "Oh yeah, sorry, our phone is not working." I'm like, well, we have an extra phone at our apartment. So me and my companion drive back to our apartment. We grab the phone, come back, we plug it in, and it's not working. So I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of good. I used to take stuff apart. Let me go check the phone lines. So one of the rules, like LDS missionaries, wherever your companion go, you go. So you're always within eyesight of one another, eyesight and earshot.
Your team.
Yeah. And this is for your safety, and it's also for the safety of, so you don't get accused of anything false. So we walk outside to where the little box is for the phone. And I'm looking at, it's like out of a scary movie. I'm like, the phone lines have been cut. So I'm sitting there like using my teeth and unsplice the wires, and I'm twisting wires. And next thing you know, we hear, we just hear this gunfire coming. We feel the bullets going past us. And we kind of just stood there like, that's weird. Why would anybody be shooting at us? And then we walked in the house like it was no big deal. And we're like, hey, we should get home, because we do have a curfew. Like I think it was 9 or 9:30. We had to be back in the apartment. So we went back and we sat there, and I was like, dude, and that's in that same area. It was snowing, and we were walking. We had been out knocking doors, and we're walking back to our apartment, and this guy pulls up in this Cutlass, and he was like, "Hey, you need a ride?" I'm like, "Yeah." We're like 2 miles away from the house, so we hop in. And he has this big pig sticker, this big Bowie knife, sitting in between me and him, and I'm in the front seat. And he looks at me, and he's like, "What's up?" And I'm like,
nothing.
All right, man. Like, what's going to happen here? And so we had him take us about 3 blocks short of where we lived. And we were like, hey, yeah, we just live over here. And he let us out. He's like, hey, man, y'all be safe. Don't be afraid. Here's my number if you need anything, type deal. And then the only other experience I had that was kind of interesting in that aspect is we're out knocking on doors in the projects again. And this was in Augusta, Georgia. And we're down off. So they have, like, here we have Medical City, right? At the time they had 3 hospitals clustered in one area, kind of like how we have it in Medical City. Well, we're in that area, but the surrounding area is nothing but I think it's Payne, university, which is a HBCU, Historical Black College University that's there. And then you have the projects. And we were knocking on doors in the projects. And I'm noticing there's more cars on the street than normal, but it wasn't unusual. So we're knocking, we get it to this one guy's door. And I was like, hey, this is who we are, and blah, blah, blah. And he looks out, he looks left and right, and he goes, man, I don't got time right now. Let me get your card. And so we took his name and number and gave him our card. And then we walked back to where our bikes were. And oh boy, like as soon as we were within a safe distance from the house, the police swarmed in, bust down the door, and arrested this dude. So that's when I learned that the Mormon missionaries were considered the GBI. They thought we all were like part of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. So it was really hard to get into some of those black spaces because of that. It was really hard, but yeah, those are like the little experiences that you go through when you're a Mormon missionary, and it was fun. It was a great 2 years of my life that I got a chance to experience.
We've had a couple other guys that did Mormon missions. Aaron Turner went to Mexico, and just recently we had Tyler Schwab on, who went to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic.
Nice.
Aaron is a really good friend of mine. He still lives out in Salt Lake City, but he's moving to Orlando here. He's building a house. He's been a very successful businessman, but he told me what you guys are expected to do when you're a missionary, and especially these guys out of Mexico. They were dependent on the locals for food, and he was in Jalisco, which is where a lot of the cartels are located. And here's this big, and Aaron's he's six, he might be 6'5". He sticks out pretty, 6'5" white boy walking around in Jalisco, Mexico, sticks out like a sore thumb. But the food, he came back suffering from PTSD over lack of food, believe it or not. He had to go through some counseling to overcome that. But it sounds like they just kind of toss you guys out there.
So back in the day, a lot of the Mormon youth would save up their money to go on missions, and then their parents would send them money. So, and you get an allowance. It's a really humble allowance, but you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay for utilities or anything like that. And the members of your congregation will more than likely feed you. So, and there are some places like my brother-in-law, he went to Fiji and he had the same, where you go to an impoverished area, people are not as, they're just as generous, but
they just don't have
a lot. Yeah. So Georgia was a little like, needless to say, I lost weight, but I didn't go hungry. I never went hungry.
Well, that's good to hear.
Like the missionaries before me, like generational, had built up relationships with businesses and restaurants, soup kitchens and whatnot. We always had food, So
okay,
but yeah.
Well, when you finished your mission trip, did you return to California? And what did you go to college? Did you decide military? What did you decide
at that point? I moved back home, got a job working for Sony. Was going to school, got an apartment, started dating, kind of like almost the normal script for a Latter-day Saint, except I just didn't go to BYU. I had plans to go to Utah to go to school, but I just wasn't ready for it. And I don't think Utah was ready for me. And, but I had this pull to go, like the military was just like, it was flirting with it. It was like this hot chick just like giving me the side eye the whole time. And there was guys that were in my young adult congregation that were reservists or in the National Guard doing their thing. And I almost went down that route, but so I was working at Sony and the Army recruiter walks in. And I was only home for like a year and a half, maybe 2. After my mission. And I hated every aspect of being home. I wanted to be back in Georgia. I didn't realize how prejudiced California was to my experience in Georgia.
Wow.
And I say that with all sincerity, like, because in Georgia, if someone didn't like you, they was just like, hey, and if they were white, they were like, hey, Bo, I don't like you. It had nothing to do with the color of your skin. I just don't like you. Or it would be, they were always nice to you. Like, you were always treated like you were a human. That was my experience at home in California. And I wanted out. I didn't want to be there anymore. I hated everything about California. I felt like I was just spinning my wheels there. So when a recruiter walked in, I looked at him and I was like, can I get weekends off? And he was like, because I was working, I worked most weekends. And when you work retail, you work almost all your weekends. And he was like, yeah, there's times where you go out to the field and there's training and stuff. But if you don't have any additional duty, you have most of your weekends off. And I was like, I'll be at your office this afternoon. So he waited for me, sat down. We started the paperwork. Once the MEPS, when you go to MEPS and you get your physical and you take your test and all that, once you complete that and you sign your contract, I went and put my 2-week notice in. And a month later, I was on an airplane to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. And and that was the beginning of my new life.
Did you have an idea what you wanted to do in the military? And why did you pick Army and not one of the other branches?
Well, so the Navy really appealed to me because I like the idea of being on a ship. I like the idea of being part of a bigger thing, but I didn't like what I didn't know. My dad was an Army reservist, and I knew that was more familiar. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but that scared the hell out of me. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, a naval aviator. I didn't feel like I had enough intelligence for that because there was a lot of unknowns, and when you don't know, you're kind of apprehensive of taking certain steps. But I did serve my mission at Fort Benning, and I was around U.S. Army Rangers, and I was like, hey, that's what I want to be. And so we started drawing up a Ranger contract, and I called my dad up, and I was like, hey, Dad, I'm going to join the Army. And he was an infantryman, and he was like, so what do you want to do? I go, I want to be a airborne Ranger. He was like, and his time in the infantry was different. There was a different era for him. He was a Vietnam era a soldier who, while active duty, and when he got out, he went reservist. And it was a really different experience for him. And he was like, if you can do anything, pick a MOS because you can always be infantry. He was like, pick a job that you learn that skill, do it, and then change to infantry. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. He's a reasonable guy. He's never led me astray before. So I signed up to be a satellite systems operator maintainer, which is a 31 Sierra. That's the MOS designator. Today it's called a 25 Sierra. For whatever reason, they changed it. Who knows? But so I went to Fort. So I was back on my mission in Georgia at Fort. So I go to Fort Jackson and I go to basic training. Basic training was nothing. What it was not what I expected it to be. It was actually it was really annoying. I was a little bit older. I was 22, 23 years old at the time. And it just annoyed the hell out of me. People yelling at you, and I'm like, man, and I'm surrounded by 17 and 18-year-olds and maybe one or two other guys my age. So I go through the boring minutia of basic training, and then later my advanced individual training at Fort Gordon. That was 9 months. I completed that because I had airborne in my contract. I ended up going. I was supposed to go to. So I got airborne in my contract, which meant I was going to go to an airborne unit. However, my orders were cut to a non-airborne unit, and the school that they offered there was air assault. So I got to thinking, I was like, how can I get both? And I'm a young private. I'm like, what can they do to me? I'm a private. They're going to take away rank. I mean, what rank do I have? So I was like, I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, you know what? I'm going to accept these orders. I'm not going to say anything about my airborne contract until I get to my gaining unit. Once I get there, I'll let them know that I have my airborne in my contract. They'll send me to airborne school from there rather than going from AIT to airborne school and then to another unit. I can kind of control what I get. So I get to my unit, and sure enough, I said, I wait about a month, and I go up to my platoon sergeant. Like, hey, sergeant, something weird happened. At what point do I go to airborne school? And he looked at me. He was like, what do you mean? I go, well, I got airborne in my contract. My orders got cut for Fort Campbell. It's not an airborne unit. And he was like, oh, crap. Someone messed up. And so after talking to all the leadership, they said, well, send him to air assault school. He passed that. We'll send him to airborne school. And that's what they did. And so I was a private in a air assault unit with both airborne and air assault wings. And I kind of manipulated. That was the one aspect of my career I truly manipulated to get what I wanted.
Well, looking back at your high school, you were an overachiever there. Now you're in the military, where you went on your missionary trip, and you overachieved there, and you're doing the same thing in the Army. So yeah, that's unusual that you planned it out.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see. And I looked at my risk assessment matrix, and I was like, this is acceptable. I mean, I lived in a barracks. What more can they do than just take my rank? I mean, and I'm not wrong. So, yeah, they sent me. And from there, because I did that, I met my wife. So
where at? What city were
we're
in?
She's an Army brat. Her dad, she had just a couple years prior to me getting there, her family had just moved from Germany, where she grew up. And her dad was stationed there, and the kids all grew up in Germany. And
are you in Campbell or you're Benning or
Campbell? Yeah. And so I was dating her. So I'm going to church, and I meet her roommate, and I started dating her roommate. And her roommate was kind of she was a wackadoo, man. She was like, I took this chick out to, like, a private doesn't make a lot of money as it is. And I was like, I think I had just pinned, I was a specialist at the time. So I was making a little bit more money. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this girl to the Phantom Menace and the Olive Garden. And the Olive Garden to me was like, that was like going to a Michelin restaurant. I mean, a private salary, and this girl wasn't a stripper. So I take her so we go to the Olive Garden first, and we're eating, and they bring out that big old bowl of salad, and she's like, I don't eat salad. And I'm like, in my head, all right, so that's strike one. I don't date picky eaters, you know. Strike 2 and 3 happened simultaneously. So we eat. She's complaining about the meal and everything. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we're getting ready to go to the movie, and we walk outside the restaurant. And at this particular Olive Garden, they had like a flower bed with all these flowers, and so she picks up this flower, and I'm thinking, oh, she's gonna do something cute and put it in her hair, and she ate the flower. And
what?
She ate the flower, and so I was like,
that's when you look at your watch and go, look at the time. I think I gotta go home.
I'm not. This is not cool, because I think that the Olive Garden cost me $30. And this was a lot of money for a private or a specialist back then, because I was only bringing home $800 a month. So $30, that's 2 tanks of gas. That's 2 tanks of gas back then. But anyway, I take her home, and I'm like, and this was right before I went to air assault school, and I went to go see the Phantom Menace by myself. And then I started this school, air assault school, and I'm getting ready to graduate, and I'm like, oh man, I really would like someone to be here because I didn't have any family in the area. I knew nobody except people I knew from church. So I called her up, and she had moved. My wife, who was living with her as her roommate, picked up the phone. I was like, "Hey, can I speak to so and so?" And she was like, "Oh, she's not here right now." I'm like, "Oh, what happened to her? When's she going to be back?" She's not. She goes, after that date, she was upset and decided to move to Arizona. I'm like, and so I was like,
okay.
I was like, all right, so what are you doing?
You didn't know you had that power over women like that, did you?
It's like the light switch came on and she scattered like a cockroach.
Uh-huh.
So my wife, I took her bowling, and that night I was like, she was 18, I was 21, 22, I think. Maybe 23. She's getting ready to turn 19. And I was like, well, at least she's legal.
Now we know your wife is in the house right now because she brought you something to drink, and I'd hate to see her punch you right off of that seat you're in.
Well, she's upstairs working. So yeah, we started dating. I was just, I love this girl and this is awesome. So I asked her to marry me, and then we got married. Her dad, I was kind of concerned my wife is white, I'm black. I was kind of concerned. Her mom loved me. Like I walked in the house, her mom was like, "Oh, you're awesome. You want to take her off my hands? Yeah, sure, whatever." Her brothers are all hanging. I got like, teenagers and little kids hanging off of me. And I was like, this is home. This is awesome. And then, but her dad was deployed to Korea. I don't want to go through any issues. He shows up for wedding day. He was like a black dude. So the Army had just implemented Army Knowledge Online. It was like, so if you had the internet, you were given a email address, your official Army email address. So I got her dad's name from her, and I wrote him an email, sent a picture. He knew we were dating. Sent a picture. I said, in the email, I said something to the effect, "I'd like to marry your daughter. Is that fine?" So I didn't want there to be any issues. He wrote back. He goes, it appears that you love my daughter. You seem to be a good man. You have my blessing. And I was like, awesome.
Oh, that took some pressure off, didn't it?
And then from that point on, I have a great relationship with my in-laws. I call them mom and dad, even when my mom and dad are present. So I have to look at them in the face and say "mom," so they know who I'm talking to. But it's my mom has never asked me not to do it. So it's just, they've been parents to me. They've been great mentors. They've always been there for a while.
How long have you guys been married now?
This January will be 25 years.
Excellent. And any little rugrats running around?
I have a daughter. I have two daughters. No rugrats. They're straight up retards. Or I can't say that word. They're young adults right now.
Yeah, you can. This is my podcast. You can say
they're young adults now. I have one that's married. She lives in Utah. She's married to an awesome young man. And then my daughter, my youngest, is she just graduated the fire academy. And so she hopefully we'll find it out soon whether or not she's going to be a firefighter working at a department. So
here in Orange County,
maybe Seminole. I think she's going to be up in Seminole. So
okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty stoked. Excellent. It was probably one of the first things I said to you when we met. It's like, oh yeah, my daughter's a firefighter, or going to be a firefighter. Yeah. So, but yeah.
I think I said I'll pray for her.
But so we're a good team. She's a good teammate. My wife is. We've had our ups and downs. She's been there for me out my military career. She's always had my back. She's been part of every major decision except for one, and that was moving down here. I didn't tell her. I knew we were going to move down here, and I didn't let them know until I had orders in hand, and they didn't like it. So, so I had a house full of women angry at me. But
we'll get into that after we get into your career. Yeah. Hey, players, this is the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. And as a surprise this week, we'll have a part 3 that comes out on Wednesday. In the meantime, just a reminder that Game of Crimes is now posting interview videos on YouTube. You can find those at Game of Crimes Podcast, and I ask that you click on the subscribe and like buttons. On social media, check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Game of Crimes Podcast, and on X at Game of Crimes. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fan page and join us for some fun there. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including all our episodes, the book list, which contains the books written by our guests, Game of Crimes merchandise, and more. And for more content, join us on patreon.com/Game of Crimes. I have several monthly episodes that range from silly to serious, so come on over and join the fun. In the meantime, everyone stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.